Mom, will you please come up and stay with me for a bit? I'm really sick. Something is wrong. I had horrible insomnia all night, and I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day. I started taking the medicine my doctor prescribed for anxiety, and I think it's made things worse. It's just really scary, and I don't want to be alone. She had become, during this whole time, paranoid about different things that really she shouldn't have, really weren't logical to become paranoid about. She would mention that this wasn't her mind. She would say to me, this isn't me. I've never been like this before. And I would agree because she wasn't.
She had had suicidal ideation every day for a month.
After 70 witnesses over 13 days, the prosecution has rested. Day 14th is the first time the defense builds its own case, and they open with Lindsay's mother and sister. I'm Marcus Wren. Today's video works directly from the raw live stream, tracing a who knew what when timeline from the vantage point closest to Lindsay in this entire trial, her own family. Subscribe if you want analysis built from primary footage.
And they were having a fairly good summer.
Yes.
Did you notice at some point a change in Lindsay's demeanor?
Yes.
Tell the jury when that was.
It was sometime probably around the second week of October.
What happened that you noticed?
I noticed that she had become very anxious. She told me she was anxious about going back to work because Callan was having trouble taking a bottle and she didn't feel right about leaving him.
And as a result of that, did she tell you that she was going to put off going back to work?
Yes, she told me she was applying for an extension.
Now, did you know at that point that she was going through any issues involving depression or anxiety or having any suicidal ideation or anything like that?
At that point, no.
At what point, if any, did you become aware that your daughter was suffering from this symptomology?
In late October.
And how did that come about?
She sent me a text message.
And do you recall when that was?
Yes, that was on October 20th.
Now, Your Honor, the government has introduced into evidence the entire of the phone dumps, if you will, and I think they put it on a disc, and it's probably thousands of pages. But I do have the text thread that deals with that time frame in October. I'd like to offer that so that it's apparent what I'm referring to rather than having to search through thousands of pages of a disc.
No objection.
Okay. They may be admitted.
So approaching, let me offer this thing.
276.
Now, the text message that you're referring to, would that be on October 20th of 2022?
Yes,
And do you have that on your phone right now?
I do.
Can you just pull that up for us?
I can. Just give me a moment. Okay, I have it.
Counselor, do you have a copy maybe that she could look at?
Oh, I have a copy.
Yeah, that might be easier for the witness.
So I'm going to approach you with this board and ask if this is a copy of the text that you're referring to.
Yes, it is.
Would you read that for the jury?
Mom, will you please come up and stay with me for a bit? I'm really sick. Something is wrong. I had horrible insomnia all night, and I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day. I started taking the medicine my doctor prescribed for anxiety, and I think it's made things worse. It's just really scary, and I don't want to be alone.
Lindsay's mother testified. In early October, Lindsay was only normally anxious about returning to work because Callan wasn't taking a bottle well, a completely reasonable concern for a new mother. Less than 2 weeks later, on October 20th, came this text. This isn't a slow decline, it's a very fast drop. The psychiatric literature is clear on this. Postpartum psychosis is treated as a psychiatric emergency specifically because of how unusually fast its onset and deterioration are compared to other psychiatric conditions. Not a months-long wearing down, but a shift from fine to crisis that can happen within days to weeks. This text matches that pattern exactly, does. It isn't emotional exaggeration.
She had become, during this whole time, paranoid about different things that really she shouldn't have, really weren't logical to become paranoid about. She would mention that this wasn't her mind. She would say to me, this isn't me. I've never been like this before. And I would agree because she wasn't. She was attempting to go through the motions of her day, take care of the kids as best she could. She didn't want to drive. So at times when Pat didn't go pick the kids up at school, I would drive Lindsay to pick the kids up at school because she was afraid to drive.
Did she express to you concern that in this time frame that people at the school, teachers and other people would be able to know what she was thinking and would think that she wasn't a good mother because she was sick?
Yes, she said the school knows something.
This isn't ordinary anxiety. This is what psychiatry calls an idea of reference. The belief that other people are noticing, know, or are talking about your private thoughts without any basis for it. A review published in the American Journal of Psychiatry directly compared postpartum psychosis cases to non-postpartum psychotic episodes in women of similar age, and found the postpartum group had a higher rate of bizarre quality delusions, more delusions of reference and persecution, and markedly higher levels of homicidal ideation and behavior than the comparison group. This is exactly the line that separates ordinary postpartum anxiety from a genuine psychotic episode. And what Lindsay's mother is describing sits on the more serious side of that line.
Based on communication with Lindsay, and I started communicating with Pat directly at that time, she was reporting her mood was worsening, as she described as depression. She was having more suicidal thoughts. Insomnia continued to be an issue. She was really not feeling like herself.
And did you know that during that period of time where she was telling you about the suicidal thoughts and the issue of depression, that she was seeing doctors?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about seeing the doctors, and if she was on any medication, and if so, what effect did they have on her?
The first thing she said about the doctors was back in October when she said that she saw a doctor for Zoloft and had a very awful reaction to that Zoloft.
Would that be Dr. Tufts?
I don't believe she shared that specific with me.
Share the name? Okay.
No. And then I think throughout our communication over the couple months of October to December, she did share with me that she was going to doctors, she was getting different prescriptions, kind of all the things that they were trying and different treatments they were looking at.
And do you recall when you were talking with her about her symptoms towards the end of December that she had, in your words, decompensated significantly and stated to you that she felt nothing and that she was scared, things of that nature?
Yes.
What else did she tell you, if you recall?
At the end of December, so I think it was more along the same of, that she is really not feeling well. Her mood is down. She's feeling numb. She's feeling hopeless. I believe at the very end of the month, she told me she had had suicidal ideation every day for a month.
Do you recall towards the end of the month around New Year's that she voluntarily admitted herself somewhere?
Yes.
Do you know where she admitted herself?
McLean Hospital.
This is exactly the gap the postpartum psychosis literature has warned about. Psychotic symptoms are often missed because they fluctuate or are actively hidden by the patient. And clinical guidance specifically recommends asking family members, not just the patient, to catch early warning signs like paranoid ideas or unusual guilt. Dr. Tufts saw her only over telehealth, never in person. Allison lived in the same orbit and heard it directly. This isn't two people giving conflicting accounts because one of them isn't being honest. It's two different information channels, And the channel closer to Lindsay is the one with less medical paperwork attached to it.
I don't recall.
I'm looking at page 28, and there's a text from Lindsay on January 7th, 2023 at 7:02 p.m. to you where it says, make it home okay, and you said, yep. Does that make sense that you would have gone home on the 7th after the birthday party?
Yes, if that's what the text says, yes.
And then on page 29, we have text messages between yourself and Lindsay on January 8th, where you ask how things are going today, and she says, good, going to the Science Museum. You say, great, that will be fun, sleep good last night. And she said, I actually did, with less Ativan, so that was good. Do you remember that?
I don't recall the exact text messages.
Do you recall her texting you about going to the Science Museum?
No, I don't recall that.
Do you think looking at them might help?
Sure.
I'm going to show you page 29 and then page 30. Does that refresh your memory?
That's what the text says, yes.
And then on page 34, you ask how the museum was today, and Lindsay sent you some photographs and said it was fun, the kids really liked it. Do you remember that?
I don't really recall the Museum of Science experience or text, but if they're there in the text messages, then they were sent, yes.
Okay. Then on page 39, this is January 10th. You say at 9:48 a.m., good morning, how are you doing today? And Lindsay responded, good, at the gym with the kids. You said, nice, still sleeping good. And she responded, pretty good, yeah, not perfect, but enough. And you said, are you feeling any better during the day? And she said, so far, a little bit. They said a week off the Seroquel should make more of a difference, so a couple more days till that, but I do think it's helping being off. And you responded, okay, a little at a time. Do you remember that conversation?
So I don't recall the exact conversation. I think I probably texted back and forth to Lindsay almost daily during that time. So I don't remember the specific text messages, but I would say if they're there, then that's what we sent back to each other.
Okay. And then there were further text messages that day. Where you say, how was your day later on in the day? And she said it was good, played with the kids a lot, were able to go outside, Kingsbury Club and gymnastics, kept them busy, and me too.
This is the exact window Lindsay's mother just described in round 2. Afraid to drive, paranoid, this isn't me. But the actual texts between mother and daughter that same week show a Lindsay taking the kids to the Science Museum, going to the gym, doing gymnastics, sleeping pretty good. This isn't a contradiction that proves someone is lying. The same American Journal of Psychiatry research cited in round 2 also found that postpartum psychosis carries more mood lability and impaired sensorium than other forms of psychosis. Patients can swing between relatively lucid stretches and severe crisis episodes, sometimes just days apart. A week containing both a fun museum trip and too afraid to drive isn't evidence someone was faking one of the two. It's the textbook clinical picture of this specific illness. To be clear, what Lindsay's family describes, paranoia, daily suicidal thoughts, fear of driving, is family testimony, not independently confirmed by medical records at the exact time it happened. And the prosecution has a legitimate basis for pointing out that the same week also produced perfectly ordinary texts. Both things being true at once doesn't mean one side is lying. It means the real picture is more complicated than any single text or any single testimony can capture on its own. The jury, working from both the family's testimony and the full text record, is the body actually equipped to assemble that full picture. Out of these 4 pieces of testimony, which one stopped you the longest? Comment below. I read everyone. Subscribe for the next breakdown from the Raw Courtroom feed.